Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me here, and thanks Timi for her invitation. I'll speak about Zen and yoga a little bit. Off and on, I've been doing some years of yoga, starting in my teens, and after a long pause, continuing about 5 years ago. And I hope to enrich your practice, whatever meditation you pursue, with an overall view how the two cultures developed out of one root, that is Indian and Chinese culture in terms of spiritual practice. And then in the second part of my introductory Dharma talk, I would be giving practical instructions how to do this Zen meditation if you so wish. That's why it's called a workshop, not quite just a Dharma talk, okay? So long time ago, somebody came down from the Himalayas and just sat. Sadhguru says it was 15,000 years ago, and that's the origin of yoga. In fact, we don't know the origin of yoga. But this is one narrative that tries to tell you how it got started. Another one is Patanjali, which was about 100 years after the Buddha, about 400 years BC. And if you read the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, you read the spiritual foundations of yoga that were written down. But those foundations have been verbally transmitted for centuries, if not millennia prior. So getting back to the Buddhist tradition, which I'm part of, Shakyamuni Buddha was born about 2,560 some years ago. And he related to Hinduism and Buddhism as his own home culture. He got started as a kshatriya or warrior class. He was going to be king. But as he got his education in the tradition and culture of Hinduism, he found something which he couldn't resolve. At that time, and even now, of course, Hinduism talks about the Atma Brahman as the highest essence or the Shiva Shakti if you want to practice and attain enlightenment, in Sanskrit moksha. And the 6 darshanas, the 6 major studies of Hinduism, contain yoga as one. I could list you the other 5, but there's no use right now. If you're interested, I can do that later. So one of them is yoga. Yoga has 8 levels. And Shakyamuni, as we know it, mastered all of them. But still, he couldn't find the actual experience of this Atma Brahman, or the highest essence, the highest God, the highest principle. So he left his home, went to 2 teachers, so he studied not just the yoga, but the Vedanta and probably Sankhya as well. And then he still couldn't find extinguishing experience of his doubts, so he went on to try and find what we are really made of, who we truly are. And for 6 years, he had been practicing really hard. He tried all kinds of stuff, from extreme asceticism, from very complex object-oriented meditation, and he still couldn't find this self, this Atma Brahman, the highest self. And as legend has it, for the last 49 days of his meditation, he was sitting under the Bodhi tree on the Niranjana river bank, and he vowed he would not get up before he either gets awakening or dies. And as some movies have it, Little Buddha by Bertolucci, he saw 3 very important stages of delusions before actually waking up to what he used to teach later. And one delusion was the invincibility. Against that came an army of armed demons, huge army with all arrows and lances and everything. And he sat. He didn't move. And all the arrows and lances just dropped as buckets of flowers in front of his feet. Delusion of anger, check. Next is the delusion of desire. Mara's daughters. Mara is the god of death. So they appeared, and they were extremely beautiful, but Shakyamuni didn't get up and didn't follow them. Desire, check. Next comes the hardest, your self-image. So you want to be Buddha, sooner or later you see yourself as Buddha, and that's the greatest danger, because you believe it. Once you identify with any name and form, your progress on the path is blocked. So he appeared before himself as Buddha, and the original didn't move. And the delusion appeared, endured, and disappeared. When it disappeared, the real one got enlightenment. So this disappearance is very important. When wrong views, wrong ideas about yourself, your most cherished self-image, or your most hated self-image, whichever comes first, they disappear, you're free. This freedom he called anatman, or non-self. So he tried to find a most exalted, holy self, the Atma Brahman, and he realized this is not a person. This is not a being. This is not a specific state of mind. It's something we don't know what that is, but we experience it as not knowing. Not making any names and forms, no self or non-self. This experience has absolutely no subject and object distinguished, so is the experience of not two. When you think, your mind makes two. Yogis discover that. When your mind begins to make waves, it's called vritti. You probably are aware of the term. And the first sentence in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra is Yogash Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which means yoga means the suspension of all dualistic activity of your mind. So when you do yoga, the first 4 stages are just the introductory. In the West, the first 2, the yama and the niyama, most yoga places, unless they are really traditional, they don't talk much about it. Yama and niyama are the precepts or rules, what to follow, yama, and what not to follow, niyama. Why is this important? First of all, you have to have a proper container if you want to collect water. If your container is broken or has a hole in it, it cannot hold water. So if your life is broken because you don't keep the basic rules of body and mind, your practice will flow away. You will lose energy no matter what you do. And then you cannot keep the results of your practice, okay? So yama and niyama, without being too orthodox, means live correctly. That's what it means. So don't abuse substances, don't do harm, don't steal, don't lie, don't do all these things. It's not just so that you could be a good person. It's a byproduct, but it's not the main focus. It's a necessary byproduct that you will be more accepted and you will have less trouble with the law. But it's essential for your practice that you keep the rules. Otherwise, your whole being is like a sieve or something broken or something with a lot of holes as a vessel, and it cannot keep energy correctly inside because your information is incorrect. Your self-image is incorrect, okay? So this is the first 2. Next 2 is pranayama and asana, which you do here. Beautiful asanas, 26 plus 2, great. And you may do pranayama as well, which is the next after asana, because then you only work with the breath. With asana, you work with body and breath. And with pranayama, it's just the breath, of course, with some hand positions and hand gestures involved. But why do the 3rd and the 4th? Well, in the West, it's for good health, good energy system, your nadis open up, you look younger, you feel sharper, etc. But in the olden days, these were just side effects. Nobody practiced for immortality in yoga. But we practiced for longer life so that we could finish our goals in incarnation. And whether it's yoga or Zen, both have the purpose of awakening. In Sanskrit, moksha. In Korean, hwakchol de-o, the perfect unexcelled enlightenment. What is this kind of awakening? If you ask yogis, they really tell you by their experience that the Shiva Shakti or the Atma Brahman is also not a statue or a phrase in a book or just a mantra that you repeat. It's a state of mind which is clear like space, clear like a mirror. The lack of this is when your karma covers your mirror. The Buddha called it avidya, or not seeing. When our attention is dispersed, or it's just going the wrong place, the wrong direction. Hence, the fifth stage of yoga is what we call pratyahara. Pratyahara means turning the attention, your energy, inwards. Mostly, we are robbed by our own senses. We are externalizing our attention to objects of desire and sometimes objects of anger, okay? We want to get our object of desire and we want to annihilate our object of anger, all right? So once we stop doing that, we stop being so dualistic about the world. And then one of the major vrittis, high tide, desire, low tide, anger. This wave starts to have a little narrower range or narrower amplitude. We don't waste so much energy to our extreme thoughts and extreme emotions. With pratyahara, you can already notice that even with asana you do, because if you have any movement of the mind, you break the asana, you break the position. So when you make a mistake, it's not your body that makes the mistake. At first it does, but when you are used to it, your mind moves just a little bit, asana is broken. And you say, what did I do? You didn't watch your mind. First, watch your body position, watch your breath, asana, pranayama. Next, watch your mind. And with pratyahara, you turn the energy inwards. You turn the attention inwards. Stage 6 is dharana. Dharana is a fixed object of mind, like a mantra or an image, or just perceiving the sounds of space inside. And if you have dharana, that means your focus doesn't move. Sunim used to call this a cat sitting in front of the mouse hole. Just like that, watching. You may kick the cat, don't. The head doesn't move, just the butt, a little bit. So your karma can kick you, but your practice doesn't move. That's dharana, okay? And next, the 7th stage is jhana. Jhana is literally becoming one, like the water drop returning to the ocean. And samadhi is the final extinction of the notion of self. Literally, samadhi means extinction. Literally, the term jhana went into Chinese 28 generations after Buddha as channa, then chan, son, and zen. So the 7th stage of yoga went to China by virtue of many, many monks. Around the time of Jesus Christ, already China had Buddhism. But the person who really put the seal of Zen into China was Bodhidharma, 1,000 years after Buddha, 6th century AD. So Bodhidharma took this whole thing into China and merged it with Taoism and Confucianism. And that's what gives Zen its special flavor. The flexibility, the poetic nature, sometimes this misty, paradoxical openings, that's Taoism. Okay? If you read the Tao Te Ching, you see that somebody was Buddhist, but they expressed themselves differently. Yeah, but it's the other way around. Buddhists were accepted by Taoists, and for centuries they blended the tradition together within the context of Confucianism, both in China and Korea, and later in Japan. This is a historical order. Later on, the 2 major views of awakening got termed as gradual practice, yoga, or sudden practice, as Zen. In yoga, you have a long process of preparation. That's why in Tibetan Buddhism, they have months and years of preparation before they actually sit down to meditate, because they want to clear away a lot of karmic hindrances prior to that. In Zen, the first day you get the essential teaching. That's why it's called the Southern School, Southern Path. And now, especially in this age of efficiency, very time-conscious life, etc., everybody wants the Southern Path. Okay, give it to me, quick, 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 quick. I don't want to pay so much, okay? So not 20 years of practice. 2 weekends, or even 1. I want to get it. So this, when you hear the sound, someone tells you that when you hear this sound real loud and clear, that moment your nirodha, or the suspension of dualistic thinking, is realized, and you're done. That's much easier than the 6 stages, the 6 darshans, and one of them is the yoga. And within yoga there are 8 stages, and only the 7th is jhana, then samadhi, and I have to do so much before, and all the rules. Don't believe this. Don't believe that the sudden and the gradual are so different. Why? Because we are human beings. We have our homework cut out for us. Okay? And that's awakening and clearing away our karma. Some people's habits support a sudden path. Me, I'm impatient. He can tell you. I'm an impatient guy. Very energetic. I want to get things done now. I've been doing this for 35 years. Was I kind of deluded and it's kind of in the wrong path? No. I was aware of the basics when I signed up, but the fun, of course, begins when you really go deep into practice and you perceive what you're carrying in your backpack. Gradual path. I've got very good yogi and yogini friends. They don't even notice how they get there, because they are always in the kind of gradual process. But the mind gets clearer and clearer with every yoga session. The connection between body and mind is sealed more and more during every yoga session. And no matter which one you choose, like I said, your homework is to perceive yourself, perceive what you're carrying in your karmic backpack, i.e. your subconscious, and get down to business. Most people believe that if they subscribe to a tradition or religion, it's like having a bridge. You find a bridge, you pay the money, and you go across the bridge. The toll, your karmic toll fee. And most religions offer you that. You just have to read this, do this, believe this, and you can go through the bridge. Zen is not like that. Why? We have several problems with the bridge. Some people, when they are on the same bridge and they realize that, they go lockstep. They become uniform. And they break the bridge. If you ever walked on a bridge, it starts to shake when people go in lockstep. And when you're a soldier, they forbid you as a unit to keep pace. You cannot go lockstep. So uniformity is a problem in religion, because everybody is conditioned to think the same way, speak the same way, act the same way, etc. That makes you a good person or a good follower. So Zen is not like that. The other problem with the bridge is that if you like it, you want to take a piece of it home. So you unscrew parts of the bolts and nuts and pieces of metal, and you try to take a few pieces. That means you copy-paste the examples, the texts, the behavior. So you become a copycat. It's a problem too. And if you don't like the bridge, you undermine it by trying to blow it up. So you can also see this in organized religion, because there's a set of rules that you cannot break because they are absolute. You cannot question, you cannot alter, you cannot evolve, you just have to follow. And when people get angry, they try to blow it up. Humanly, sometimes financially, sometimes legally, sometimes politically, but in every possible way, they rebel in the wrong way. Why? Because they didn't build a bridge. It's not their creation. So Zen is very, very different. It's the same river, same shores, but you only have a backpack full of stones. And before you realize that you have stones in your backpack, you think that you are heavy. No, your karma is heavy. And once you realize how you make your karma, because you ask your first question, what is this? What is this thing I call myself? What is this? Then you realize that all your anger, desire, and ignorance is the weight in your backpack. It's like stones. All your attachments, all your identifications, all your projections, all your going back to the past and holding everything, okay? Trying to make it right. That's the heaviness. And once you let go of one of these, you throw a stone into the river, it becomes a stepping stone. And you step on it. You see it's working. Then, okay, next stone. I'm not so afraid anymore that I lose myself. I only lose my karma, not myself. Another stone, another stone. And then you realize that there's other people doing the same thing from their own backpack, their own stones. So I'm not alone. We are practicing together. Okay? And there's a couple of rules about that too. We can step on each other's stones, but we cannot touch each other's backpacks. I can help you if you fall, but I cannot take off your load. Why? I didn't put it on your back. You did. You can take off mine. I made it. It's my homework. Okay? So this is a very different view from the established paths when you are just a follower or a kind of piece of the action or just a little human machine. And as for the view of sudden and gradual, it really doesn't matter. It's all made in this mind. Why? Because imagine that you build a palace. And the palace is ready when all the roofs are in place. But you love building it so much that another floor, another extension, another wing. So you never finish it. You never say, this is it, I'm done. That's my practice. But you always tweak it, extend it, think about it, fix it. So that's how the gradual path can evolve into an endless stream of, I would say, instrumental evolution, but no realization. Some Tibetan Buddhist friends of mine who are into this yogic practice, and they did it for decades, when I presented them with this, the no name, no form, no thinking experience, he said, and he was Tibetan, we have 10,000 techniques, but no attainment. You have to attain. All these techniques are for one thing, attain your true nature. That's all. That means the roof is on the castle. It's finished. But you keep it clean. So building a house is one thing, but keeping it in good shape is another, okay? It doesn't mean your practice stops. It means your search is over. Your practical evolution as an extension and another floor is over. So what's wrong with the sudden? The sudden, sometimes it's a very dangerous proposition because you begin with the roof. Not the foundation, not the floors, not the building, but the roof. So you shoot up the roof 9-story high. The absolute. That's all I want. I only want the true nature experience. I only want jhana. The preceding 6 levels of yoga, they don't matter. Okay? So that means your roof is in thin air. And unless it's shaped like the wing of an aircraft and there's constant wind blowing, the effort of your practice, it falls down. So that's why some Zen practitioners who had been practicing very hard for many, many years, once they stop practicing, they fall down to the ground. Why? Because they don't let the dharma and the karma, their practice and their person meet. That means you're not honest with your practice. And once you are, in your mind mirror, you see your problems. Once you see your karma, you can evolve. You see how your mind operates. You see how your sense of self is created and it keeps changing all the time. You see how you create your own anger and your greed. How you project things onto people, how you check your ideas, how you hold on to the past, how you attach to ideas, and how you want things only for yourself. All these are mistakes. All these are coming from avidya, or not seeing, not perceiving correctly. And then the building gets started. Sometimes your experience of life is very far from your practice experience because the roof is 9-story high and your building just got started. Your development, your ripening as human being just got started. But if you're honest with your practice, the two get closer and closer and closer. How do you know that the roof and the building finally met? That the mind coming into the yoga hall or the zendo is not different from the mind going shopping or going to the seaside. That's how you know that it became complete. So after this general introduction, I'll take a few questions from you, any kind of question regarding what I said. And after that, I open the second part, which is about the practical aspect of Zen meditation, how we do it based on the Korean tradition. So thank you for your sharp eyes and unmoving focus so far. Keep it up. It's very good. And now I would like to welcome any questions of yours.
The analogy about the backpack and not taking somebody else's stones out of the backpack. I understand what you're trying to convey with that, but I think it's human nature to want to reach over and take somebody's stones out of their backpack to help them.
Yeah.
How do you, even though you can't, how do you keep in your mind and in your heart, how can you let somebody struggle, and how do you keep from doing that? How do you keep in your own life from helping others and removing those stones?
Okay. First of all, you have to look at your hands before you touch somebody else's backpack. And you realize it's not empty. It has its own stones in it. So in fact, when you want to take stones out of somebody's backpack, you will inevitably put some into it. It's the reverse process. So by interfering with somebody else's karma, you don't let their own mirror function, their own mirror mind. And we're talking about adults, not kids. Children's education is a very different process. So we touch somebody else's mind with our own dirty hands. It's a mistake. Instead, when you see that it's heavy, make the person stronger, not the load lighter. So the instinct to help, that's okay. In fact, in Mahayana, the Bodhisattva path means attain enlightenment and help all beings, lifetime after lifetime. In yoga, you don't have that idea. In fact, it went straight into Theravada Buddhism that you attain nirvana, nirodha, nirvikalpa samadhi. There are many names to this. And you're off. You disappear in the sunset. You're gone. And somebody else wants to follow you, they have to find your tracks. I.e., Taoist hermits and yogis and yoginis alike, they were in huts. Some in the lowlands, near the river Ganges. Some of them high in the Chinese mountains, but they didn't leave. You wanted to find them, you had to search all over the area and back to become students. In Mahayana, there are monasteries where you can go and you can become a student, and these days, Zen centers. So the idea that we teach and help people doesn't mean that we try and take their karma away, because we didn't make it. We have to make them realize they made it. Okay? And where you see the origin, you can see the end. If you can get people to grow up spiritually, then they can see moment to moment, how do I create karma by talking, acting, thinking, and feelings, plus the sensations. So this kind of realization and facing the mirror, facing the karma, that's what helps. You cannot take people's karmic load away. Not possible. Why? Because they would develop complexes. They would develop traumas. They would add your projections and your holding mind to their own problems. And that's why I really don't give advice to people. I teach people. I teach people how to practice. And some of them approach me, please help me with this kind of specific problem. I have marital problems, I have this and that. For 17 years, between 2000 and 2017, I used to do that. And I didn't continue for one reason. It was useless. People didn't change their lives because I said something. People changed their lives because they changed their minds. And they only changed their minds when they realized who they truly are instead of who they thought they were. And that's why I'm saying that Zen is a path of disappointment and disillusionment and disenchantment. And the adult form of spirituality means that you are ready to be disillusioned, disenchanted, and disappointed. So that's how the unloading process begins, because you cannot identify with your previous self-image anymore. So facing it as it is the only way to keep your own autonomy, integrity, as well as cooperation and harmony. That's why. It's not harsh. There's a poem by Zen Master Sung San. Outside the door, there's a puppy whimpering. Don't kill it with kindness. It doesn't mean you have to be rude. You got me there, okay? It doesn't mean you are harsh or uncouth or intolerable. It means you are real. You don't try to paint reality better than it is. You don't try to paint a better picture of yourself than you are. Work on yourself, then you become different, but your self-image is fake. You are real. Your image is fake. That's why. More questions?
Thanks for those words. I was just curious. I'm not familiar with your particular lineage of Zen, but you did talk about Taoism and its influence on Zen. And I've read a little bit, and it seems to me that in certain Zen practice, like Zazen, there's a lot of rigidity. And that seems the opposite of Taoism, which is more natural, kind of like flowing like water and so on. So is your particular practice, what has changed from Taoism in terms of the Zen that you practice?
I think you quote the Japanese approach because they are really rigid, okay?
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Every culture has its impact on its spiritual practice, and every spiritual practice, if correct, has an impact on its culture. So it's like a cycle. In Korea, the form is not so rigid, although we are taught to strive for sitting unmoving in body, unmoving in speech, silent, and unmoving in mind, not making anything, okay, not willfully thinking. But the fact that in Japan they really hit you hard if you move even a half an inch, that's samurai culture. It has nothing to do with Zen itself. So when, through several waves and several decades and centuries, Chan went to Korea, became Son, and then through Korea went to Japan, became Zen. And from Japan they went back to China several times and got direct transmission from the late Song dynasty. They already had the samurai culture blooming. So in Japan, two branches developed. One is the farmer's Zen, Soto. The other is the Kshatriya or warrior's Zen, Rinzai. And there was another very mystical part, the Obaku or the Huangpo school. That was very mystical. Let's leave it at that. All right? So when after the Second World War, Japanese Zen came to the West, America first, Europe next, then what you saw is a samurai sitting. Okay? And they hit you, and they had their sword as, you know, Zen stick. And that harsh discipline, like even militaristic, it was mistaken for Zen culture proper. No, it was Japanese culture suffused with Zen. If you go to Korea, it's much more gentle. In China, they talk to you for hours, and they are very super kind. They give you their wonderful oily little food, and you know they just love you being there. Okay? So I visited all these three countries, especially the Chinese diaspora in Hong Kong, Singapore, and Malaysia. And I have the direct experience of this super kind, almost childlike approach of the Namu Amitabha, you know, we have the Pure Land, and they talk about this in fables, and they also meditate. So do not mistake the culture for its own spiritual message, but you should see the form of the spiritual message conditioned by the culture itself. So what I'm going to teach, shortly is the Korean approach, and of course it's very determined, but it's not militaristic at all. And by the way, suppose this is made of glass. The glass has to be rigid. Why? Because the water is liquid. If both are liquid, they are on the floor. So I usually say that the form is like clamshells. Your practice effort is like this greenish, brownish mush in the clamshell. And your original mind is the pearl. How does the search begin? By one grain of sand falling into the clamshell and causing pain. That's your original question. Why am I here? Why have I had this body and you have that body? Why were you born here and me a couple of thousand miles, who knows, west or east around the globe, depending where you go? Okay? So once you have this unresolvable question about your own existence / your own being, you have this little grain of sand in the shell. And the exterior has to be really solid. It's your conditioning, it's your self-confidence, it's your effort, it's everything, because this mush, the relativity of your existence, this meat, this little yucky stuff, okay, it cannot be held together in any other way but your own integrity. And your own integrity rule uses experiences and rules and wisdom and what to do and what not to do, the yama and the niyama part. Remember the first 2 parts of yoga out of the 8? So when that happens, you know that rigidity has its own role. Flexibility has its own role. But if it's misapplied, we become flexible when we would have to be strong and rigid, and we become rigid when we would have to be really flexible. Okay? So I think that answers your question, doesn't it?
Very insightful. Thank you.
You're welcome. More questions?
I'd like to ask you to talk a little bit about our inner noise, or
inner noise?
or
what did you say? There was just too much noise.
Unnecessary
too much noise inside.
Yes.
Inside, outside, all noise.
No.
Okay, so what's the difference between noise and music? You may say your sense of harmony. Okay? What gives you a sense of harmony? How you can unite all these vibrations into one single balanced experience. And that depends on your energy level. So I remember my first 90-day meditation, 3 months continuous. And we worked in the forest. We chopped wood, including chainsaw and axe and everything. That was in the United States, in Providence, Rhode Island. In fact, Cumberland, Rhode Island. Very tough winter. It went down to 0 degrees Fahrenheit. Really cold. And normally, chainsaw is noisy. And every single day, we used it. And one day, in the beginning of the 3rd month of the retreat, the chainsaw began to sing. I didn't hear voices. That's another sickness. That's not the point. I heard the noise, exact sound of the chainsaw, but it became music because my energy level increased so much that I could totally incorporate that into my space. It didn't break my experience. It complemented my experience. So we face, this is very important because you cannot solve most of your problems with thinking. And I'll talk to you about the reverse proportion between thinking and energy, okay? So we have this hiss in our ears. If you look inside, there are multiple frequencies. And the reason is largely this. We process so much data in 1 month as another ordinary human being in one lifetime 150 years ago. And our brains as a structure did not evolve so much that we could handle this so easily. In our subconscious, we have parallel processes going all the time. And if you are a lucid dreamer, or you're conscious about your dreams, you can verify this. We have so much data. And when it's compressed, it's the ringing or hissing. Hissing and ringing, they're not the same. It's hissing in your ears. You're not sick. You don't have this special sickness of, there's a Latin word for it which evades me right now, tinnitus. If your hiss is stronger than your actual hearing, then you have a problem. But when you meditate, this hiss can turn into this ring in the ear or this deep buzz. That means you start to process it subconsciously. So there are very few trains in this country, especially passenger trains. But imagine a passenger train which is so far that you can only see a silver streak. That's the hiss. If you go closer with your object-oriented meditation and you ask, what is this? Where does this come from? Then you see the wagons, the carriages, and the engines. If you go even closer, you can see the windows. You go even closer, you can see the passengers. You see the passengers even closer, you see the eyes and the faces, and you recognize, oh, that's my friend, that's my enemy, that's my mother, that's my father. So all your memories and subconscious processes are compressed into this hiss. And it's perfectly okay that you have it to a certain limit, because you can't live without this stream of information. You watch some streaming service for sure, at least one. You watch your own favorite news channel, homepage, maybe even television, although it's a little bit old school by now. So you have a stream of digital input which you cannot empty out. If you do many weeks, even months of digital abstinence, yeah, the term is valid, I didn't coin it, digital abstinence. Then this hiss can go down, 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 and it can completely disappear. It's a normal byproduct of our lives. If it becomes too loud and it blocks your senses, including your ability to think, then there's a problem. Then you reach the limit, which is dangerous.
Hi there. Thank you
Hi.
for being here. There's a quote that it takes a village to raise a child, and I'm curious on like the karma was mentioned a lot, and I'm curious if like a child's malleable when they're young, and I'm curious if the child bears the weight of the village's karma per se.
You have a kid?
No, sir.
So then why the question?
I'm curious if like the village's karma is the child has to carry the village's karma.
He was born there or she was born there, so cannot not carry it. So I have a 3-year-old, okay? He was born to us in the temple environment. What is really amazing, how much he carries of the couple karma, mom and dad, the family karma, the relatives. I can see a lot of traits from family members he had never met, at least not in this life. And also the group karma, which is partly defined by the Sangha where we live, the temple community, and also the larger Hungarian community. So we have 4 kinds of karma. Individual karma, couple karma, that's Adam and Eve, okay? In the Garden of Eden. And then child pops out, becomes family karma. And when the relationship is not blood relationship based, but somehow larger identity or contractual, that's group karma or social karma. Okay? Very clearly, 4 divisions. And the kid belongs to each of them. So if you want to really unload some stones from your own backpack and throw it into the river of awareness and reflect on your own karma, ask 3 questions. Why was I born to my parents? Why was I born to my family? Why was I born to my country/society? And for that, you need to have a really clear mirror inside. Why? Your own mind, your own dualistic mind should not interfere. That's why I quoted Patanjali. Your chitta, your dualistic intellect, has to be suspended, nirodha, so that your own ups and downs, likes and dislikes, worries and concerns and desire and anger, all the vritti, would not interfere. And once you've done that, your clarity is the environment where the answer is born. In Tibetan Buddhism, they call that liberation by perception. Liberation from the bondage of your own wrong views by perceiving clearly. As a personal experience, it's like a bunch of jigsaw puzzle pieces which you throw up into thin air, and as you meditate, they slowly fall towards the ground. And as you see each of them, just by seeing that, they fall into place. You don't use your dualistic left, right, back, forth intellect to try to put them into place. It happens by itself. We call that the self-cleansing capability of the mind. Bodhicitta in Sanskrit, and Buddha nature in proper English. Of course, it's a human concept for something that has no name and no form. But by observation, if your energy level is high enough, this self-cleansing capability is activated. Relating to the previous question, if you have too much information in your head, in your subconscious, your energy level is low. If you think too much, feel too much, and not get rid of it, you get sick. Or you make others sick, depending on your habits. Yeah. So when that happens, you know that you have absorbed/imparted information at a very low level, attachment level, identification level. All right? When you practice and you go beyond thinking, both cultures have it, I've just explained it recently, then your energy level goes high at the expense of your information. So information content goes down, forms, mental formations disappear, and what they called emptiness, but it's not nothing, okay? Emptiness gets stronger. So energy goes higher, information goes lower. Make friends with this. It will help you a lot, okay? This is not something you hear all the time. And that's why in Zen we don't read so much. You don't need so much reading. Yeah, you can do the foundations, read 1 or 2 years of Buddhist literature, listen to some guy on YouTube, whatever. But after a while, stop it. Okay, there's even a therapy called Stop It. Look it up. It's 5 minutes. Bob Gerhardt, he's great. So just stop it. Stop reading. Look inside and boom, ask the right question. And then, if you have just the necessary and sufficient energy level so that your mind wouldn't be in these waves all the time, then it becomes like a mirror. Where that threshold is, only you feel, only you know, and your teacher. Your teacher's job is to see that where you are in this real Jacob's ladder, okay? And then you can sort out your karma by not touching it. We don't touch that. We let this karma fall into place. Suffering in Sanskrit is dukkha. When the axle of a vehicle falls out of the wheel, fallen apart, out of place, disconnected, being in disharmony, that's dukkha. And sukha, which is happiness, literally means the axle is in the wheel, everything is connected, everything is harmonious, and of course that is happiness. Why? Happiness has this heightened energy experience. Remember the times when you were very happy? In any possible way. You really didn't think about yourself. You and the world, for one moment, became one. And that oneness experience, whether it was through marital relationship or a family event, or you in Siesta Key one morning being all alone, just the seagulls, you know, and the waves, that oneness was when your idea of self disappeared, and in exchange, a big shot of energy appeared. Now, if we do this in the wrong way, we become addicts. Because no chemistry can give you that. No substance can give you that. Only your true nature can give you that. That's the original. That's the only authentic form. So if you don't attain your true nature, you cannot be truly happy. Every other form of happiness is okay, but it's sensory-induced or substance-induced. You know, some people are very happy when they eat good food. Some other people don't care. Depends. But if you are free from the unnecessary information, dualistic delusions, then as a consequence, your energy level increases. And that's the byproduct of good practice and the good yoga session. Because you're not thinking. You return before thinking. That's why I drew this long circle because there's a method how you see why a kid is born to the parents, to the family, and to the society where she was. And based on my limited experience, I figured something out. The reason you get stuck in one karmic class is based on the other three not being developed and perceived enough. So if you have a kind of couple problem, there's always a problem between you and your significant other. Chances are you haven't resolved your family karma with mom and dad. All right? If you always have a group problem, you don't get the right place in a group, then your self-knowledge or your individual karma is quite unresolved. And there's a lot of other permutations which I don't go into. Do your own math, okay? So if you hit a dead spot or a dead end in your own path, then don't just look back. Look around, up and down. Which karmic class is undeveloped? Where did I not see my karma? Where am I still blind? And that blind spot affects everything. Everything. So thanks for your question, because my kid will be asking similar questions. Dad, why was I born to you? And Mom, why was I born to Hungary? What is my job in the 21st century? 2022. He will live, hopefully, to the end of this century. And that will be rough. It's not going to be a smooth ride. We all know that. So he'll be asking me tough questions. And if you have grandchildren of similar age, or maybe children similar age, they will do the same. Are you prepared to answer them? I hope you are. More questions?